My mother-in-law deliberately infected my 1-year-old daughter with chickenpox. I'm furious. She thinks it's no big deal. I could barely type this because the very thought of what happened drives me crazy. My husband, he's 31, and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time since our daughter was born last year. They live 12 hours away, so we planned to come a couple of weeks early so that the grandparents could spend more time with Annie, our 13-month-old daughter. We arrived ahead of time as planned, and everything was great. I'd already had some disagreements with my mother-in-law Trish. She's 56 about my parenting choices. She criticized me for using disposable diapers, for buying baby food, and for not going all natural in everything, but things seemed to be going okay. A day or two after we settled in, my husband and I decided to drive to a mall an hour away to buy gifts before the holiday rush began. My father-in-law, he's 63, came with us. Trish said she'd be happy to watch Annie. We were gone for a few hours, and when we came back, Annie was sleeping on some unfamiliar blanket. Trish told me that one of her friends had dropped by and brought it as a Christmas gift. It looked pretty old and worn, but I figured it was one of her hippie friends giving us a recycled material present, or something. The next 2 weeks went fine, except for the fact that Trish insisted on cooking Annie's food from scratch. I mentioned it to my husband, and he said to just ignore it. Mostly Annie smeared food with her hands or threw bowls on the floor, like she usually does now, Trish said. Annie needed time to get used to natural food. Her meddling was getting on my nerves, but I chose to tolerate it for the holidays. The day after Christmas, Annie became very fussy and kept squirming and crying. I took her temperature, and she had a fever, so I monitored her closely for the next couple of days. Luckily, the fever started going down, but this morning she broke out in a rash and blisters appeared on her hands and feet. I panicked. I started packing a bag to take her to the doctor when Trish asked where I was going. I told her Annie had a rash and I was taking her to get checked. She smirked with this weird smug expression and said there was nothing to worry about. When I asked what she meant, she didn't even look at Annie and just said it was chickenpox. I asked how the hell she would even know that. And then Trish calmly admitted that the grandson of one of her friends had chickenpox a couple of weeks ago, and she asked the friend to rub a blanket all over the kid's arms, legs, and face, then bring the blanket to her house. At that moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked if it was the same gift blanket Annie had slept on. She said it was. I just snapped. Honestly, I don't even remember what I said. I hadn't slept in almost 2 days, constantly checking on Annie. I went off on Trish, shouting, "What the hell is wrong with you?" My husband and father-in-law tried to intervene and calm everyone down, but Trish stood her ground. She insisted that getting chickenpox now was the best and most natural way to build Annie's immune system. We already had a vaccination schedule worked out with our pediatrician. The chickenpox vaccine was scheduled for 18 months. We went to the doctor, and he confirmed it was chickenpox. He told me I'd need to trim Annie's nails and maybe put socks on her hands at night because kids this age scratch themselves raw and it can leave permanent scars. On the way back from the doctor, my husband started defending Trish, saying she was just trying to help. I couldn't believe he was taking her side. We argued nearly the whole drive until I finally told him to shut up. Annie was scratching like crazy, and I ended up putting socks on her hands when we got back. Trish tried to talk to me, but I told her to get the hell out of my sight. We had planned to stay until Wednesday, but I had already finished packing and planned to leave first thing in the morning. I was so furious I couldn't even think straight. Every time I heard Trish moving around in the kitchen, my heart would race and I'd want to storm out and rip her hair out. I didn't want to see her again. I didn't want her near my daughter ever again. What can I even say to make her and my husband understand the full weight of what she's done? I don't think I can speak rationally to either of them until Annie gets better. Comments: why wasn't your daughter vaccinated against chickenpox? We follow the vaccination schedule agreed upon with our pediatrician. She had her MMR shot Last month when she turned 1. The chickenpox shot is scheduled for 18 months, which is standard. If someone did this to my child, deliberately infected them with a disease behind my back, clearly trying to undermine my authority as a parent, to teach me a lesson, that person would never ever see my child again without me present. Your husband needs to stop being a mama's boy and start being a dad. The next morning, I woke up early and started loading the car. I opened it up and kept the key in my pocket since I was going in and out constantly. We usually use Jack's key, and mine stays in my bag. While I packed, Jack sat in the kitchen with Trish and his dad, sipping coffee and chatting like nothing happened. Thankfully, Annie was still asleep, so I gently strapped her into her car seat and closed the door. Then Jack came out and asked if I had everything. I said we were ready to go as soon as he finished up. He said, okay, pulled out his key and hit the central lock button, locking Emmy and Annie inside. I asked, what the hell are you doing? He said we weren't leaving until I apologized to Trish. I think I froze in shock for a second because he took that moment to launch into the same crap as the night before, that Trish thought she was doing the right thing, that chickenpox isn't deadly, that I was overreacting and making Trish feel terrible. Yes, poor Trish feels bad. All I could hear in my head were the comments from my last post. I told him it was time to stop being a mama's boy and start being a father. He made a face and said he'd always be Trish's son, and that's the problem. He said no one had the right to talk to his mom the way I did yesterday, and I had to apologize. To de-escalate the situation, I felt like I was in some twisted reality show, like I had married a 9-year-old instead of a grown man. So I told him to unlock the car so we could leave. He refused, then he just walked back into the house and said he'd come back when I started acting reasonably. You've probably guessed what happened next. I had left my bag on the passenger seat, and he must have assumed my keys were inside. Nope. I waited about 30 seconds, then calmly got in the driver's seat and drove off. My phone blew up with calls. Jack, Trish, my father and law. Then my mom, dad, and my sister Jez, who I'm very close to. I had messaged Jez the night before with a brief explanation of what was happening, but once she learned the full story, she was shocked. While I was on the highway, I asked her to call Jack and tell him to walk his damn self home. I didn't care. Turns out, he told everyone I'd gone crazy, that I'd scared Trish, grabbed Annie, and stormed off. Once Jez heard my version and not Jack's, she calmed down. My mom, dad, and Jez offered to drive out and meet me partway so I wouldn't have to drive all 12 hours alone with a baby. When I saw them, I broke down. I started sobbing in the parking lot of some roadside diner, mumbling how much I loved them. They took turns driving while I caught some sleep. It was unbelievably healing to finally talk it through and to hear that Trish and Jack were the ones being completely irrational. When we got back, I stayed at my parents' house for the night. They said I could stay as long as I needed. The next few days were rough. I barely slept, constantly checking on Annie to keep her from scratching herself raw, but she still somehow managed to. It felt like she just cried and cried until she collapsed from exhaustion. Now she has 5 scars on her face and more on her arms from scratching. I know looks aren't everything, but I am furious that her skin is now permanently damaged because of some F***ing bullshit. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. I did end up answering one of Jack's calls. He started ranting that he didn't recognize who I'd become. I just hung up on him. He was supposed to come home at the end of his vacation. I wasn't looking forward to it, but I figured we could at least try to coexist since Trish lived 12 hours away from us. Then, around 11 p.m. one night, I got a very short and formal message from my father-in-law sent from Jack's phone. Trish has shingles. She's in the Jack is staying to take care of her and plans to work remotely from their house once his leave ends. So now Jack has spent weeks waiting on his mother hand and foot. I'm sure she's putting on a whole performance about being 1 foot in the grave. From what I've Googled, she probably is in agony with oozing, painful blisters. Shingles only occurs in people who've already had chickenpox. The virus stays dormant in your body and reactivates when your immune system weakens. The chickenpox vaccine helps prevent this. Irony. Huh? Just a few weeks ago, I was so exhausted, depressed, and in shock that I didn't know what to do. But now, being back home with people who actually care about me, I'm beginning to realize how lucky I am to have seen through this twisted codependency between Jack and his mommy so early. The fact that he's more concerned about Trish than his own daughter speaks volumes. When he finally comes back, I think we're going to have a serious conversation about our future. Comment 1. He locked his sick baby in a car and thought you wouldn't be able to get her out. That was his plan. That psychological warfare. Good for you for walking away. No matter what happens to your marriage, you clearly have your priorities straight as a parent. Wishing any a speedy recovery. Comments 2. Exactly. He locked a sick infant in a vehicle. Major respect for handling this so calmly. I would have lost it. That's ***ing horrifying behavior. Poor kid, growing up with a dad like that. Comments 3. Shingles only happen to people who've had chickenpox. The virus never fully leaves your body and comes back later when immunity is low. The vaccine protects against this. The irony is chef's kiss. Comments 4. I would have served him divorce papers already before his mommy decides your daughter should become a Scientologist. Well, that's all. Write your opinion in the comments. Watch our previous video. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if for some reason you haven't done so yet, and good luck to you.